Good morning to you all. I am Mr. Philip Kigun, a senior research officer with the Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute. I'm here to present on behalf of the United Nations Institute for Economic Development and Planning, a consultant, and I'm presenting a course designed for development of resilient transport infrastructure in Africa. This is Module 1, which is titled The Regulatory Environment for the Development of Transport Infrastructure. The summary of the course outline is Introduction, Transport Sector Scope, Transport Sector Activities, Regulatory Environment at continental level, Regulatory Environment at regional level, Regulatory Environment at national level, main difficulties in implementing regulatory texts, then the conclusion. The introduction. Infrastructure corresponds to the basic equipment which is the foundation of contemporary societies and falls within the framework of regional planning and public service policies. It is customary to distinguish between hard infrastructure and soft infrastructures. Hard infrastructure, these cover the development of transport, energy, and communication networks. Soft infrastructure, this refers to the removal of intangible barriers to the free movement of goods, capital, services, and labor, as well as the establishment of institutional frameworks. Business environment, this deals with good governance, irregular payments, fight against corruption, efficiency of borders and transport, number of export documents, checkpoints, etc., etc. These different infrastructure play a very important role in the economy of the countries and must respect a regulatory environment for their development. Sector scope in transports. Transports can be carried out by different modes, commonly called subsectors. We distinguish these sectors into routes, railways, airways, sea lanes, inland waterways, pipelines, multimodal systems, exotic systems, quasi-transports. Activities in the transport sector involve policy/strategy development, administration management, planning, analysis, synthesis and designs, construction, supervision and control, operation of structures, maintenance of structures, monitoring and evaluation. Transport engineering. This, in quote, is the application of technological and scientific principles to the planning, functional design, operation and management of facilities for a mode or subsector of transport with a view to facilitating the movement of people and goods in a secure, rapid manner, comfortable, practical, economical, and respecting the environment. The regulatory environment at continental level deals with legal and regulatory frameworks. This is where AU ministerial declarations, AU summit decisions, declarations from decisions of ministers and presidents of RECs. RECs here is regional economic regional economic community, intergovernmental agreements, Common African Position for the post-2015 Development Agenda, laws and codes at national level. The regulatory framework at continental level. This is transport strategy and policies developed by AUC, NPCA, ECA, African Development Bank, and the regional economic communities, RECs, govern the planning process from which regional transport projects are designed, justified, and developed so as to make their implementation possible. The regulatory framework at continental level also includes strategic planning framework, where African Union Constitutive Acts, AUC Strategic Plan, MPCA Strategic Plan, constitutions of regional economic communities through collaboration platforms, example, ECA, COMESA, SADC tripartite framework, ECA work program, that is to say strategic framework stroke program budget, the UEMOA PA, national development plans. The regulatory framework also has the role and responsibilities of AUC, NPCA, ACE, AFDB, CER, organizations along the corridors, member states, development partners, private sector, civil societies. The policies, plans, and programs include African Infrastructure Development Program, NEPAD, Presidential Initiative of Infrastructure Champions, Intergovernmental Agreement on the Trans-African Highway Network, Northern Corridor Strategic Plan, African Road Safety Action Plan, Transport Master Plans of the Regional Economic Communities, Consensual Master Plan for Transport in Central Africa, the EAC Roads Network, Master Plan for Infrastructure in the SADC area, ECOWAS Road Network in West Africa. At that continental level, we have also segmented how the regulatory environment should look like. There are in three segments. We have one fashion, policy frameworks from documents, main actors. Under fashion, we have the routes, the railway, the air transport, maritime transport / inland waterways. The policy frameworks from documents include UNTACDA 1 and 2, SITRASS, TAR Intergovernmental Agreement, PIDA/PICI, REG Master Plan, treaties, regional agreements and guidelines, strategies on transport corridors. For railway, we have Continental Master Plan, REG Master Plan, PIDA/PICI. The air transport, we have Decision Yamoussoukro, YD Regulatory Framework, and then the maritime transport inland waterways covers Africa Maritime Charter, PICI for the policy framework. The main actors under routes are AUC, ECA, African Development Bank, NPCA, Regional Economic Community, member states. For railway, we have the AUC, CEA, NPCA member states. For air transport, we have the AUC, the CEA, NPCA member states. For maritime transport, we have the AUC, NPCA, and member states. These are the main actors in the regulatory environment. Regulatory environment at continental level. The examples are UNTACDA 1 and 2 program, UTACDA 1 from 1978 to 1988 resulted in the preparation of the Untitled 2 program launched in November 1991. The long-term objectives are: 1, to establish an efficient integrated transport system with a view to promote Africa's physical integration, facilitating trade, and achieving sustainable economic development. 2, to ensure African participation in the global process. And 3, to contribute to poverty reduction in Africa. The Untitled 2 is 708 projects covering 11 subsectors and broken down as follows. Transport sector, 508, including roads and road transport. 214 railways, 89, air transport, 77, maritime transport, 40, seaports, 37, multimodal transport, 27, river transport, 17, and urban transport, 17. The communication sector has 200, including telecommunications, 145, radio broadcast, 29, and postal services, 26. Bottom-up approach to Untitled 2 preparation and implementation involving multiple bodies, which are National Coordination Committee, CNC, sub-regional and subsector working groups and interagency coordination committee, ICC, resource mobilization committee, RMC, responsible body, CEA, conference of ministers. Monitoring the implementation involved 1, the CNC at the national level, members of sub-regional or subsector working groups at the sub-regional level. The CNC, in collaboration with the sub-regional organization, regularly inform the ECA on the progress of the implementation. Monitoring the implementation involved to members of the working groups regularly briefed ECA on progress through their group leaders. ECA maintained direct links with the CNC and various working groups. ECA has provided detailed reports to the CMR, the ICC, and the Conference of Ministers. Out of the total of 708 projects under UNTADA 2, 354, which makes 50%, were completed. 112, which makes 16%, partially completed. 202, which forms 28%, not executed. 40, which is 6%, was abandoned. The regulatory framework at the intercontinental level include example, African highways. The TAR dates from the early 1970s with a view to create direct road links, linking the capitals of the continent, contribute to the political, economic, and social integration and cohesion in Africa, provide road transport facilities between major production areas and consumption areas. The latest version of the African highways is shown on the map in the following slides. Now here we have a slide that shows the map of Trans-African highways. We are meant to understand that it is grouped into Trans-African Highway 01, Cairo to Dakar, is depicted with a red line. Trans-African Highway number 2, Algiers to Lagos, it has a purple coloration. Trans-African Highway number 3, which is Tripoli to Windhoek to Cape Town, is green in color. TAR 4, which is Cairo, Gabron, Cape Town, is slightly light colored blue. Dakar to N'Djamena is blue, is number 5. N'Djamena, Djibouti is 6. Dakar, Lagos is 7. Lagos, Mombasa is 8. Beira, Lobito is 9. And Libreville, Djibouti is 10. These are the keys that shows also the major ports at the country's national capital. The regulatory framework also at the continental level is made up of an institutional arrangement / difficulties, main difficulties of the Trans-African highways. In 1971, Office of the Trans-African Road Networks established in the Transport, Communication and Tourism Division of the ECA. In 1980, ECA established the Lagos-Mombasa Road Authority, which is secretariat based in Banjul. Efforts made by ECA in the late 1980s to revitalize the Trans-African Highway Office and the authorities. There were also difficulties which are highlighted as: 1, lack of support from member states; 2, operating costs; and then 3, tasks not clearly defined. The Intergovernmental Agreement on Trans-African Highways, initiated by the Ministers of Transport in 2011 in Lusaka, approved by the head of states in 2014 in Malabo, the AUC as a task secretariat. Another working group is made up of AUC, ECA, NPCA, regional economic communities, African development banks, specialized institutions and agencies. Agreement is still not in force because 15 ratifications are required. Example of NEPAD short-term action plan. PAT. It was launched in 2002 to assist in the implementation of policy reforms in regional economic communities and member states, facilitate and support the implementation of short-term regional infrastructure projects. The concerns were nearly 120 projects in 4 sectors. These include energy, ICT, transport, and management of cross-border hydraulic resources. The overall projects were classified into 4 types. 1, facilitation, which is the establishment of strategic, regulatory, and institutional frameworks. 2, capacity building to enable implementing institutions to carry out their mandates. 3, investment, that is the physical and capital projects. Studies, where research was for the preparation of future projects. The role of NEPAD was also to mobilize political will and actions to implement strategic and institutional reforms, harmonizing regulatory system and ratifying agreements, facilitate the mobilization of resources for regional projects, facilitate knowledge sharing, networking, and popularization of good practices between countries and regional economic communities / technical agencies. The third part review concluded that the implementation of the program suffered from the lack of frameworks for regular monitoring, weak capacities, and nebulous roles of the different entities. It then recommended that NEPAD and African Development Bank provide short-term assistance in institutional capacity building with a view to accelerating camp projects. Example, use the services of project management consultant / advisors to help in the implementing agencies complete projects. Example of PIDA. PIDA here is Program Infrastructure Development in Africa, was saddled with implementation based on coordinated actions by all actors at all levels of African development processes, the CUA and MPC at continental level, the REC at regional level, individual countries at the national level, IAIDA-based process, the PIDA implementation strategy. Continental bodies like AUC, NPCA were for monitoring and advocacy for the implementation processes at the continental level. CER, central elements in the planning and monitoring of PIDA projects. Monitoring of the progress of projects, harmonization and implementation of soft measures across countries, inform the continental bodies responsible for informing decision makers and head of states and government on the general states of progress. Develop master plans and identify regional integration infrastructure together with member states. NEPAD planning and coordinating agencies. Update PIDA in close collaboration with the RECs and their specialized institutions. Perform a periodic planning exercise at least every 5 years. Identifies revised perspective for the future and for PIDA priority action plan. The member states must drive their own projects. These are some of the responsibilities. They must implement projects in the field using the services of experienced builders, private or public. They are expected to create ad hoc entities for each project. They are to mobilize resources and build capacity for project preparation, implementation, operation, and maintenance. Part of their responsibilities include the head of states of member states and governments are to provide political leadership and set the agenda. The PIC, financial institutions like the African Development Bank will provide financial leadership together with country governments. The Transport Master Plan in Central Africa were assessed to be in 1988, decision number 16/CCEG/V/88, making certain sections of National Roads Community 2 in 2000 CEMAC regulation number 9/00/CEMAC 067 CM04 had the responsibility of defining a priority and integration road network for sub-region. In 2004, adoption of the consensual transport master plan in Central Africa with reference framework for the development of transport infrastructure in Central Africa. The mechanism for implementing the master plans include, but not limited to, national steering committees and focal points, operational monitoring committees, CEAC, CEMAC, BDEAC, CEA/SRO-CA. Ministerial monitoring committees were Gabon, Cameroon, Congo, and Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Conference of Central African Ministers responsible for transport and public works, and also to convene a summit of head of states. Abidjan-Lagos Road Construction Projects. In 2014, a treaty on the establishment of the Abidjan-Lagos corridor signed by the head of states of Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria was carried out. It was also establishment of Abidjan-Lagos corridor and the introduction of a management authority, supranational status. The management authority had the supranational status, legal personality and financial autonomy, responsibility for the construction, management, and operation of the corridor. There was also the establishment of the Project Steering Committee, PPC. This composed of ministers responsible for road transport, roads infrastructure, public works in the member states and ECOWAS. Commissioner in charge of infrastructure. The PPC is chaired by the Minister of Works of Nigeria and oversees the implementation of Abidjan-Lagos Corridor Development Program. ECOWAS provided the Secretariat. The North-South Corridor Program. This was a tripartite project preparation unit set up in 2011. The PPIU is part of the broader governance structure of the COMESA EAC SADC tripartite free trade area. The transport sector constitutes a complex environment where several actors with different interests intervene. There are market and non-market goods, private and public goods, external effects, situation of perfect competition, monopoly and oligopoly, national and regional levels, etc. The functioning of this environment requires a minimum of rules to make the sector work harmoniously. The main objectives of the regulatory environment at the national level were to organize the sector, the public and private actors. They were also to set the conditions for entering and exercising the profession, determine the operating conditions, establish the modalities of conflict resolution. Essential objectives where these rules, norms, and standards depend on the operating conditions and the specific of each mode. Codes are edited: aviation code, code of the sea and inland waterways, highway code and highway codes, railway regulations, protocols, and conventions are adopted. The essential objectives include, in this policy framework, the level of details of these laws and regulations are influenced by the transport activity itself and the nature of the text as well. These also relate to infrastructure and the services delivered there. These measures are generally long-term. The participating bodies can be distinguished by those who propose, those who adopt, those who apply, those who watch over it, those who settle conflicts. Those who propose are public bodies responsible for the management of the sector operators, those who adopt. Depending on the nature of the text, those of general scope are adopted by a public entity, the executive or the legislature, and those of intra-professional scope by the actors themselves. Those who apply are mainly operators, stroke professionals. Those who watch over it are public administrators acting as police and professional groups. Those who settle conflicts are essentially public arbitration bodies, professional groups who are only authorized for their own text. The road subsector. The National or Regional Highway Code is the main text regulating traffic. The Highway Code, text of a national or regional nature, determine the conditions for entering and exercising the professions. Transporter, vehicle renter, company driving schools, etc., and also for operating the roads regulation 14 of UEMOU, etc. Text on road safety, technical inspection of vehicles, etc. The road subsector. These norms and standards for road construction, equipment, and signage. Vehicle standards to import. Text of economic nature, prices, etc. Social text, working time. National texts are sometimes influenced by supranational text to facilitate interstate circulation. The railway subsector. It is strongly influenced by equipment producers, not to mention the colonial heritage on infrastructure and equipment. Commendable efforts are being made by states and integration developed organizations to better supervise the subsector. Technical standards of the track, equipment, and operating standards, trade and labor regulations. The maritime and inland water subsector is dominated by foreign operators for the maritime sector, with a serious impact on the mastery of the subsector. Essentially, the legislation's regulations are limited only to the port interface. Inland waterways such as lakes and rivers are poorly regulated. The maritime and inland waters subsector, these involve infrastructure standards are dictated by the size of the ship that frequent the ports. The text of access and exercise of the auxiliary transport professional, text regulating working conditions, economic text to include tariff, taxes, etc. The aviation subsector. This subsector, strongly supervised by the International Civil Aviation Administration, national and regional effort to organize the subsector implementation, complements and guarantee the preservation of national and regional interests. Text of access and exercises to professions related to the subsector, safety and security text, infrastructure standards in relation to fixed and mobile equipment. On that same regulatory environment on the national level, these are actions to be taken to pursue efforts to comply with the best standards, sometimes dictated by the international nature of the activity. One, monitoring and evaluation of the functioning of the sector. Two, exchange of good practices. Three, continuity of training and information for the various actors. The full and concomitant application of regulatory text remains a major challenge for Africa. This is the main difficulties in the implementation of the regulatory text. The main difficulties of the non-application of regulatory text is a noted absence of a strong political will. The success of the full application of the text is inhibited by a slowness in the process of their ratification at the state level. In conclusion, the transport sector has the capacity or will contribute more to the national or regional economy if the efforts undertaken make it possible to: one, improve the efficiency of the sector through technical performance, regulatory consistency, and two, ensure better participation of the private sector and a fair presence of the public sector. A quality continental road network is based on good planning at African Union level, good appropriation, and regional economic community level, and strong political will for integration at state level. Thank you for listening, and I will entertain questions where you find issues in understanding. Thank you once more.